Imagine looking up and seeing something so massive that your brain refuses to accept it's real. Not a plane, not a cloud, not lights in the distance, but a solid object blotting out stars, moving silently across the sky, so enormous that it takes minutes to pass overhead, so close you could throw a stone at it, so impossible that 10,000 people will see it and spend the rest of their lives trying to make sense of what their eyes told them was there. This is Phoenix, Arizona, March 13th, 1997, 7:30 p.m., and you're about to witness the largest mass UFO sighting in modern history. You're driving home from work. Radio's playing. Traffic's typical for Thursday evening. Skies that perfect desert purple. Stars just starting to pierce through. Everything's normal. Everything's predictable. Then you see it. At first you think it's formation of planes. Military exercise maybe. Luke Air Force Base isn't far. They do night training sometimes. But planes don't move like this. Planes don't hold formation this perfectly. Planes don't block out entire sections of sky. You pull over, engine still running, hands gripping steering wheel. And you watch as something the size of multiple football fields glides silently overhead. Amber lights arranged in perfect V formation, moving south at impossible speed that somehow feels slow because of its massive scale. Your heart's hammering. Mouth's dry. Every instinct screams this isn't real, can't be real, has to be some kind of trick. But your eyes keep insisting. It's there. Solid. Undeniable. Real. If you've ever seen something that made every hair on your body stand up, every nerve scream that you're witnessing something that shouldn't exist, you know this feeling. That moment when reality cracks open and shows you there's so much more out there than you were taught to believe. Welcome to the night that changed everything for Phoenix. Welcome to the night 10,000 people became witnesses to something that shouldn't exist. Mike Fortson was first to see it. 37 years old, truck driver hauling freight from Paulden down to Phoenix. He'd made this drive hundreds of times. Knew every curve of Highway 89, every mile marker, every place cell service dropped out. At 7:15 p.m., he was just north of Prescott Valley when lights appeared over Granite Mountain. Not plane lights, not helicopter lights. These were different. Amber-orange, glowing with intensity that seemed almost alive. 5 of them arranged in V formation. He slowed the truck, watching through windshield. The lights weren't moving the way aircraft move. No blinking, no navigation strobes. Just steady, purposeful glide across sky like they were connected to something invisible. Then he saw it. The shape. Between the lights, blocking out stars, was solid mass. Triangular. Enormous. He could see its edges defined by absence of starlight, see how it moved as single object, see how the lights weren't separate craft but part of something unified. Jesus Christ, he whispered to empty cab. The object passed directly overhead. Mike rolled down window, stuck his head out, looked up. He could see underside now, smooth, dark. Matte surface that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. And the size. Good God, the size. It had to be at least a mile across. Maybe more. No sound. That's what got him. Something that big should roar, should shake air, should leave sonic boom in its wake. But there was nothing. Just silence so complete it felt oppressive. You'd have pulled over too, wouldn't you? When something that massive glides overhead without making a sound. When your mind can't process what your eyes are showing you. You stop. You stare. You become witness whether you want to or not. The craft continued south toward Phoenix. Lights unwavering, movement steady. Mike grabbed his CB radio. Anyone seeing this? Anyone got eyes on these lights heading south from Prescott? Static. Then voice crackled through. Yeah, I see 'em. What the hell are they? I don't know, man. But they're connected to something big. Really big. Should we call it in? Mike hesitated. Call what in? He didn't even know what he was looking at. Just keep watching. Make sure I'm not losing my mind here. You ain't losing nothing. I see it too. Clear as day. By 7:30 p.m., calls were flooding into local police, news stations, Luke Air Force Base. Hundreds of people across northern Arizona were seeing the same thing. Lights in V formation, massive craft, silent movement, heading south. In Prescott, Tim Lay was in his front yard with his wife and 4 kids. They'd been setting up telescope to look at Hale-Bopp Comet. 1997 was its year, visible to naked eye, perfect for backyard astronomy night with family. Dad, what's that? His eldest daughter, Alicia, 12 years old, pointed north. Tim looked up. His breath caught. The lights were coming straight toward them. 5 amber orbs arranged in perfect V, moving with eerie precision. But as they got closer, he could see what Mike had seen. The shape, the solid mass connecting them. Everyone stay calm, he said, voice not calm at all. The craft passed overhead at what he estimated was less than 500 feet altitude. He could see its structure now. Triangular, yes, but with subtle curvature to edges. Like organic design that happened to be geometric. Surface seemed to shimmer slightly, though that might have been his eyes trying to process something they weren't equipped to understand. His kids were silent, staring. Even the youngest, 7-year-old Marcus, knew this was something extraordinary, something that required silence and attention. Are we safe? His wife whispered. I think so, Tim said, though he had no idea. It's not stopping. Just passing through. Picture yourself standing there with your children, watching something impossible drift overhead. What do you tell them? How do you explain what their eyes are seeing when you can't explain it to yourself? This wasn't just Tim's experience. It was shared by thousands of families that night. Parents struggling to stay calm while their world quietly rewrote itself. The craft continued south. Tim rushed inside, grabbed his video camera, old VHS model, bulky but functional. By the time he got back outside, object was distant, but he caught it on tape. Lights moving across sky, solid shape barely visible against darkness. You got it? His wife asked. Yeah, I got it. They'd watch that tape hundreds of times in years to come. Show it to investigators, researchers, skeptics. Each viewing would bring back the feeling, that mixture of awe and terror, that sense of witnessing something that changed fundamental understanding of reality. But that night, in moment, all Tim could think was, I hope the kids are okay. I hope this doesn't traumatize them. I hope this means we're not in danger. He needn't have worried about trauma. His kids would grow up knowing that universe is stranger than textbooks admit. That impossible is just word for things we haven't understood yet. That sometimes magic is real. South of Prescott, in suburbs of Phoenix, Dr. Lynn Kaite was in her home office reviewing medical charts. 53 years old, respected physician, rational mind trained to trust evidence over emotion, not the type to believe in flying saucers or little green men. But when her husband called from living room, Lynn, you need to see this. Something in his tone made her drop everything and run. Through living room window, she saw them, the lights, the V formation, moving with deliberate grace across night sky. She grabbed her camera, professional grade, high-resolution film. If something was happening, she wanted documentation, wanted proof, wanted evidence that could withstand scrutiny. She stepped outside onto balcony. The air was cool, desert breeze carrying scent of creosote and sage. Above her, the lights were brilliant. Amber orange, glowing with intensity that seemed almost aware, as if they knew they were being watched and didn't care. She started shooting. Click, advance. Click, advance. Getting multiple exposures, different angles. Through viewfinder, she could see what naked eye struggled to process. The lights weren't separate. They were attached to something enormous. Her medical training kicked in. Observe, document, analyze. Don't jump to conclusions. Trust data. The data said, massive object, unknown origin, physics-defying characteristics, multiple witnesses. The data also said, this changes everything. She kept shooting until object disappeared south over South Mountain. Then she went inside, hands shaking slightly, and developed the film immediately. She had to see, had to confirm that camera had captured what her eyes had witnessed. The photos were clear. Lights in V formation, darkness between them showing absence of stars, evidence of solid structure. This wasn't trick of light or atmospheric phenomenon. This was real. Dr. Kate sat in her darkroom, staring at images, mind racing through possibilities. Weather balloon? No. Wrong shape, wrong movement. Military aircraft? No military formation flies in perfect V with mile-wide spacing. Flares? Don't block out stars. Don't maintain rigid geometric pattern. What am I looking at? She thought. The answer wouldn't come for years. But that question would drive her to spend next decade investigating, documenting, refusing to let official explanations bury what thousands had seen. By 8 p.m., Phoenix was in chaos. Phone lines jammed, news stations overwhelmed, police dispatchers fielding hundreds of calls from residents reporting massive craft overhead. 911, what's your emergency? There's something in the sky. Something huge. I don't know what it is, but... Sir, we're aware. Multiple reports coming in. Can you describe what you're seeing? Lights. 5 of them. But they're connected. There's something solid up there. I can see it blocking stars. It's the size of... I don't even know. Several blocks? It's enormous. Is it moving? Yeah, heading south. Slow but steady. No sound at all. That's the weird part. Something that big should be making noise, but there's nothing. Okay, sir. We have air traffic control looking into it. Just stay calm. Doesn't appear to pose immediate threat. But the dispatcher was lying. Air traffic control had nothing. Luke Air Force Base had scrambled jets, but by time they got airborne, object had vanished. Radar showed nothing, or rather showed something so large that systems couldn't process it properly. Returned impossible readings that technicians dismissed as equipment malfunction. Because admitting radar worked correctly meant admitting something mile-wide had flown through one of most monitored airspaces in country without authorization, without identification, without explanation. In downtown Phoenix, people poured out of buildings, pointing skyward, cameras clicking, video cameras rolling, everyone trying to capture what their eyes were telling them couldn't be real but obviously was. Maria Chen, accountant working late in office building, stood on rooftop with coworkers. How is that flying? She asked no one in particular. Maybe it's not flying, someone said. Maybe it's, I don't know, hovering? Floating? Things don't float, Maria said. Not things that big. Physics doesn't work that way. Yeah, well, physics also says mile-wide triangles don't cruise over major cities. So maybe physics needs updating. The craft continued south, steady, implacable, like it had every right to be there. Like humans below were of minor interest at best. And maybe they were. Maybe to intelligence capable of building something that size, capable of moving it silently through atmosphere, capable of making it essentially invisible to military radar. Maybe humans were just curious primitives worth brief observation before moving on. That thought unsettled Maria more than craft itself. Idea that humanity might not be center of universe, that we might be observed rather than observers, that our technology, our civilization, our sense of advancement, all of it might be kindergarten level compared to what was up there. She went back to her desk after Kraft disappeared, tried to focus on spreadsheets and tax returns. Couldn't. Numbers suddenly seemed meaningless. What did quarterly profits matter when something that shouldn't exist had just cruised overhead? When you witness something this massive, this undeniable, you don't just go back to normal life. The world shifts. Your priorities rearrange themselves. Questions you never thought to ask suddenly become the only questions that matter. By 8:30 p.m., the craft had passed over entire Phoenix metro area and disappeared south toward Tucson. Hundreds of miles, thousands of witnesses, countless photos and videos. And then, silence. Not the comfortable silence of mystery solved, but tense, expectant silence of mystery, acknowledged but unexplained. Silence of authorities scrambling for narrative that wouldn't cause panic or admission of something they couldn't control. Tim Lay gathered his family in living room. "What we saw tonight," he said carefully, "was real. Don't let anyone tell you it wasn't. Trust your eyes. Trust your experience. We saw something extraordinary." His kids nodded, eyes still wide with wonder. "Are they going to come back?" Marcus asked. "I don't know, buddy. Maybe. Maybe not." "I hope they do," Alicia said. "I want to see them again." Tim wasn't sure he shared that sentiment. Part of him hoped never to see anything like that again. Part of him was terrified of living in a universe where things that size could appear without warning. But larger part he was only beginning to recognize, was grateful. Grateful to have witnessed something so profound. Grateful to share experience with his children. Grateful to know, beyond any doubt, that reality was far stranger and more magical than he'd been taught. Mike Fortson pulled his truck into rest stop south of Phoenix. Couldn't drive anymore. Hands still shaking. He bought coffee from vending machine, sat at picnic table, stared at night sky. Other truckers gathered nearby, talking in hushed tones. "You see it?" "Yeah, from Prescott all way down. What the hell was it?" "Don't know, but I'll tell you what it wasn't. Wasn't ours. No way we got something like that." Mike sipped his coffee. It was terrible, burned and bitter, but it was real, tangible, something he could taste and hold and understand, unlike the thing he'd just watched fly overhead. He thought about calling his wife, telling her what he'd seen. But what would he say? How do you describe something that big? How do you convey the feeling of watching reality crack open? He finished his coffee, got back in truck, had deliveries to make. Life continued, even after impossible became real. But he knew he'd never forget. The size, the silence, the way it moved like ocean wave through sky, inevitable and ancient. Dr. Kite sat in her dark room, surrounded by photos of lights and shadows and solid mass that shouldn't exist. Her medical training demanded rational explanation. Her eyes demanded she accept evidence in front of her. The evidence said, "We are not alone. We have never been alone. And tonight, for reasons we don't understand, they wanted us to see them." She would spend next 10 years investigating this night, interviewing witnesses, collecting footage, assembling case so comprehensive that dismissing it would require willful blindness. But that night, in darkroom with photos still wet, all she felt was wonder. Pure, childlike wonder at universe that was so much bigger than she'd imagined. What happened at 7:30 p.m. was just first wave. At 10 p.m., something else would appear. And official explanation for that would be so absurd that it would insult intelligence of everyone who'd witnessed what came before. 2.5 hours later, the lies began. At 10 p.m., new lights appeared over Phoenix, different from what had come before. These were dropping flares, drifting slowly, behaving exactly like what military calls LUU-2B, illumination flares dropped during training exercises. Perfect timing. Perfect excuse. Within hours, official narrative was set. What 10,000 people had witnessed at 7:30 p.m. was just these flares. Mass misidentification. Optical illusion. Nothing to see here. Move along. Except everyone who'd been there knew that was bullshit. The 7:30 event and 10 o'clock event were completely different. First was solid craft blocking stars, moving with purpose, maintaining formation. Second was clearly flares, drifting independently, behaving like falling objects do. But when you need cover story, truth becomes negotiable. Governor Fife Symington called press conference next day. March 14th. Media packed the room, expecting answers. Expecting acknowledgement that something extraordinary had occurred. Expecting leadership. What they got was mockery. Symington stood at podium, face serious. I'm pleased to announce that we have apprehended the culprit responsible for yesterday's incident. Aide walked out wearing cheap alien costume, gray rubber mask, antenna bobbing. Crowd laughed nervously. Symington grinned. This just goes to show that you people shouldn't be so gullible. It was flares from Luke Air Force Base, military training exercise. Case closed. In living room across Phoenix, Dr. Kite watched broadcast with mounting anger. She'd been up all night analyzing her photos, comparing notes with other witnesses. She knew what she'd seen, knew what thousands had seen, and now their governor was calling them gullible, was making joke of experience that had shaken them to their core. She turned off TV, sat in silence. Made decision right then. If authorities wouldn't take this seriously, she would. She'd document everything, interview every witness she could find. Build case so solid that dismissing it would require willful blindness. When something this important gets ridiculed by people in power, when your experience gets turned into punchline, you have two choices: stay silent or fight back. Dr. Kite chose to fight, and over next decade, she'd prove that sometimes one person's dedication matters more than entire government's denial. Tim Lay watched same broadcast with his kids. Alicia looked at him confused. But Dad, that's not what we saw. We saw something real. I know, sweetheart. Why is he lying? Tim didn't have good answer for that. Sometimes people in charge get scared. And when they're scared, they make jokes instead of admitting they don't know what's happening. That's stupid. Yeah, Tim agreed. It really is. He thought about his videotape, about footage sitting in his camera, about choice he had to make, go public and risk ridicule, or keep quiet and let lie stand unchallenged. Mike Fortson sat in truck stop, watching news on mounted TV. When alien costume appeared, something inside him snapped. He'd seen what he'd seen. Mile-wide craft gliding silently overhead, solid mass blocking stars, reality-defying movement. And they were calling it flares? He pulled out notepad, started writing down everything he remembered. Times, locations, details. If authorities were going to gaslight entire city, he'd make sure his testimony was preserved. Make sure someone, somewhere, someday would read it and know truth. You writing all that down? Waitress asked, refilling his coffee. Yeah, for the record. You saw it too? From Prescott all the way down. Biggest thing I've ever seen. She nodded. My sister saw it from her backyard. Said it was size of 3 football fields. Silent as a ghost. That's about right. They're lying, aren't they? About the flares. Mike looked at her. Tired waitress in all-night truck stop, asking question that mattered more than she probably realized. Yeah, he said. They're lying. She topped off his coffee. Figured. Government usually is. Within days, Arizona Republic newspaper was flooded with letters from witnesses, hundreds of them, describing what they'd seen, refuting official explanation, demanding real investigation. Janet Davis wrote, "I'm a teacher with master's degree in education. I've lived in Phoenix for 30 years. I know what flares look like. What I saw on March 13th was not flares. It was solid object moving with purpose. Please don't insult our intelligence by claiming otherwise." Robert Martinez wrote, "I'm retired Air Force pilot with 25 years experience. I've seen every type of aircraft, every kind of flare, every atmospheric phenomenon. What flew over Phoenix was none of those things. It was craft of unknown origin, and authorities know it." Stacy Robbins wrote, "My 3 children and I watched object pass directly overhead. We could see its underside, see how it blocked stars, see how lights were attached to solid structure. Telling us we saw flares is like telling us we imagined our own eyes." The letters kept coming. Accountants, lawyers, police officers, teachers, engineers, credible people with no history of UFO belief, all saying same thing. We saw something real, something massive, something that wasn't flares, but official narrative didn't budge. Flares, mass hysteria. Case closed. Dr. Kaitei began her investigation in earnest. She placed ads in local papers. "If you witnessed March 13th event, please contact me. Confidential interviews for documentary purposes." Response was overwhelming. Her phone rang constantly. People wanting to share their stories, wanting confirmation they weren't crazy, wanting someone to take them seriously. She interviewed hundreds of witnesses over next months. Patterns emerged. Everyone described same basic object. V-shaped, enormous, silent, amber lights, solid mass between lights, slow, deliberate movement south. Many described feeling of awe mixed with dread. Sense of witnessing something so far beyond human capability that it redefined their understanding of possible. Several reported physical effects: watches stopping, electronic devices malfunctioning, feelings of time dilation where minutes seemed to stretch. And almost everyone reported same emotional aftermath, mixture of wonder and frustration. Wonder at what they'd witnessed, frustration at being dismissed and ridiculed. One witness, elderly veteran named Harold Stevens, told her something that stayed with her. "I fought in World War II, saw things that would break most people, but nothing prepared me for watching that thing glide overhead. It wasn't frightening in a violent way. It was frightening in a way that makes you realize how small we are, how little we actually know about the universe we live in." Dr. Kaitei compiled everything. Photos, videos, witness testimonies, timeline analysis, radar data that had been leaked by sympathetic sources, built comprehensive case study that would eventually become documentary and book. But in 1997, in immediate aftermath, all she could do was document and preserve. Wait for a moment when world might be ready to listen. That moment would take years to arrive. Meanwhile, researchers began analyzing available footage. Multiple videos existed, shot by different people from different locations. When synchronized by time stamps and compared for consistency, they told same story. Large object, V formation of lights, sustained presence over 2-hour corridor. Jim Dilatoso, video analyst, examined footage frame by frame, ran spectral analysis on lights, comparing them to known sources. His conclusion: lights didn't match any conventional aircraft, flares, or known illumination sources. Spectrum was unique, suggesting unknown energy source. When he presented findings to media, response was tepid. One researcher's analysis against official Air Force explanation? No contest in court of public opinion. But for those paying attention, evidence was mounting. Too many witnesses, too much video, too much consistency across independent accounts. Something had happened over Phoenix. Something real. 3 months later, in June 1997, military finally provided detailed explanation. Captain Eileen Bienz, public affairs officer at Luke Air Force Base, held press conference. On evening of March 13th, Maryland Air National Guard, a 10 Warthog squadron, was conducting training exercise. They dropped LUU-2B illumination flares at approximately 10 p.m. These flares, suspended by parachutes, would have been visible across Phoenix metro area. Reporter raised hand. Captain, witnesses report seeing object at 7:30 p.m., 2.5 hours before flares were dropped. Can you explain that? We believe those earlier sightings were misidentification of regular aircraft in formation, possibly combined with celestial objects like planet Venus or stars. Venus doesn't block out stars or move across sky over 2-hour period. I can only speak to what our records show. We dropped flares at 10 p.m. That's what people saw. So you're saying 10,000 people across 300 miles all misidentified Venus? Captain Bienz's expression tightened. I'm saying people saw what we dropped. Anything else is speculation. Interview ended shortly after. Official position established. No further comment. But cracks in narrative were showing. Even mainstream media began questioning whether flare explanation adequately addressed 7:30 p.m. event. Some anchors openly expressed skepticism on air. Peter Jennings, ABC News. Whatever flew over Phoenix, it's clear that simple explanation of military flares doesn't satisfy many witnesses who insist they saw something quite different. Larry King, CNN. We're joined tonight by multiple Phoenix witnesses who say what they saw was definitely not flares. Let's hear their stories. Slowly, grudgingly, mainstream attention shifted from ridicule to curiosity. Maybe something had happened. Maybe it warranted investigation beyond dismissive press conferences. You start to see how cover-ups work, don't you? Not with threats or disappearances, but with mockery and bureaucratic dismissal, with authorities counting on public's short attention span, with official narratives that sound plausible enough that most people won't dig deeper. But some people do dig deeper. Some people refuse to let truth be buried. Years passed. Phoenix lights became footnote in UFO lore, discussed by researchers, dismissed by skeptics, largely forgotten by general public. Then, in 2007, 10 years after event, something unexpected happened. Former Governor Fife Symington held press conference. No alien costumes this time. No jokes. I need to come clean about something, he said, face serious. On March 13th, 1997, I saw the Phoenix lights myself. I was on my way home from office when I witnessed enormous craft gliding over city. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. As pilot myself, I can tell you it was definitely not conventional aircraft. Stunned silence from press corps. I made joke at press conference because I didn't want panic, didn't want economic fallout from people being afraid. But I saw it. It was real. It was massive. And we have no explanation for what it was. Symington continued. I've spent 10 years thinking about that night. About my decision to ridicule something I knew was real. And I owe apology to every witness who felt dismissed or mocked. You were right. I was wrong. Something extraordinary flew over Phoenix, and it's time we acknowledged that. Dr. Keaty watched broadcast from her home, tears streaming down her face. 10 years of investigation, 10 years of being dismissed as conspiracy theorist, and now, former governor was confirming what she'd known all along. She picked up phone, called Tim Lay.
"Are you watching this?"
"Yeah." His voice was thick with emotion. "Yeah, I'm watching."
We were right.
We always were. Now other people know it too. Across Phoenix, across country, witnesses felt something shift. Vindication, validation, recognition that their experience had been real, had mattered, had been worth preserving despite ridicule. Mike Fortson, still driving trucks, heard about Symington's confession on radio, pulled over, sat in cab, remembered that night 10 years ago when reality had cracked open above him. He thought about all the times he'd told his story and seen doubt in people's eyes, all the times he'd questioned his own memory, wondered if maybe he'd imagined it, maybe it had been flares after all. But he'd known. Deep down, he'd always known. And now, finally, others were beginning to know too. Symington's confession opened floodgates. Other officials, other pilots, other credible witnesses who'd stayed silent began speaking out. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes, retired, came forward. "I was at Luke AFB that night. We scrambled jets to intercept object. By time we got airborne, it was gone. But I saw it on radar before it disappeared. Solid contact, enormous, moving at speeds that defied explanation." Commercial pilot Ray Bowyer: "I've logged 30,000 flight hours. I know what aircraft look like from every angle. What passed over Phoenix wasn't aircraft. It was something else entirely. The narrative was shifting. Slowly, grudgingly, but shifting nonetheless. In 2008, CNN aired special documentary about Phoenix Lights, treating it seriously rather than as curiosity. Featured interviews with Symington, Dr. K.T., multiple witnesses, examined evidence without automatic dismissal. Discovery Channel followed suit. Then History Channel. Suddenly, Phoenix Lights was being discussed in mainstream venues without automatic ridicule. Not everyone was convinced, of course. Skeptics maintained it was flares, misidentification, mass hysteria. But their arguments grew weaker as more evidence emerged, as more witnesses came forward, as time provided distance for objective analysis. What became clear was this. On March 13th, 1997, something extraordinary had occurred. Whether it was extraterrestrial craft, secret military technology, or something else entirely, that remained debatable. But that something real, something massive, something unexplained had flown over Phoenix. That was becoming harder to deny. Dr. Kate published her documentary, The Phoenix Lights, in 2005. Comprehensive examination of event, featuring footage, witness testimony, expert analysis. It won awards, garnered respect from serious researchers. She'd spent 8 years compiling evidence, interviewing witnesses, preserving truth, not for fame or money, but because it mattered, because 10,000 people deserved to have their experience acknowledged rather than dismissed. "Why did you spend so much time on this?" Interviewer asked her during press tour. Dr. Kate thought about that night, about standing on her balcony, watching something impossible glide overhead, about feeling universe expand around her, about recognizing that reality was so much bigger than she'd been taught. "Because truth matters," she said simply. "Because when 10,000 people witness something extraordinary, they deserve better than mockery and lies. They deserve investigation, documentation, respect." Tim Lay's kids grew up with Phoenix Lights as defining memory of childhood. When they had kids of their own, they'd tell story. "Your grandpa saw something amazing, something that changed how he understood universe. And he taught us to trust our eyes, trust our experience, never let anyone tell us we didn't see what we saw." That might be the real legacy of Phoenix Lights. Not proof of extraterrestrial visitors or government cover-ups, but thousands of people learning to trust their own experience. learning that official narratives aren't always true, learning that reality is negotiable and mystery is acceptable and wonder is worth preserving. By 2010, Phoenix Lights had entered popular culture, referenced in television shows, movies, books. But for those who'd been there, who'd watched that enormous craft glide silently overhead, it was never entertainment. It was moment their lives divided into before and after. Before, universe was predictable, physics was settled, humanity was alone. After, universe was stranger than imagined, physics had exceptions, and someone else was out there, watching, waiting, occasionally showing themselves for reasons we could only guess at. Mike Fortson retired from trucking in 2015. Bought small house in Prescott Valley, not far from where he'd first seen the lights 18 years earlier. Sometimes, on clear nights, he'd sit in backyard and watch sky. Looking for what, he couldn't quite say. Another appearance? Confirmation? Just reminder that on one March night in 1997, he'd witnessed something that proved universe was bigger than he'd imagined? Maybe all of those. Maybe none. Maybe just habit of man who'd learned to keep watching sky because you never know what might appear. Dr. Kite continued her research. The Phoenix Lights weren't isolated incident, she discovered. Similar sightings had occurred throughout history. Massive craft appearing over populated areas, being witnessed by thousands, then being explained away or ignored by authorities. Mexico City, 1991. Hundreds of witnesses during solar eclipse. Belgium, 1989 to 90. Wave of triangular craft sightings over multiple months. Hudson Valley, New York, 1980s. Years of sightings by thousands of residents. Pattern emerged. These events weren't random. They were deliberate. Someone was showing themselves, letting humanity see them, perhaps gauging our reaction, perhaps preparing us for something. For what, Dr. Kite couldn't say, but she felt certain. Phoenix Lights was part of larger phenomenon, part of ongoing interaction between humanity and something else, something that operated on timescales and with purposes we couldn't fully grasp. In final analysis, maybe that's okay. Maybe not everything needs to be explained immediately. Maybe some mysteries need time to unfold. What matters is that on March 13, 1997, 10,000 people looked up and saw something that changed them, something that expanded their understanding of possible, something that reminded them universe is vast and strange and full of wonders we're only beginning to comprehend. They saw lights in V formation. They saw solid craft blocking stars. They saw something move through sky with grace and power that defied explanation. And they remembered. Through ridicule and dismissal, through years of being called gullible or crazy, they remembered. Because when you witness something that profound, when you touch mystery that directly, you don't forget. You carry it with you. Let it shape how you see world. Let it remind you that reality is bigger than textbooks admit. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, think about those 10,000 witnesses. Think about families standing in backyards, truckers pulling over, doctors grabbing cameras. Think about how one event connected strangers across hundreds of miles in shared experience of wonder. Think about Governor Symington, 10 years later, finally telling truth he'd hidden. Think about Dr. Kite, spending decade documenting what authorities wanted forgotten. Think about all those ordinary people who became witnesses, who carried extraordinary experience forward into lives that would never quite be ordinary again. And maybe, just maybe, look up at night sky a little more often. Watch for lights that move wrong, for silence where there should be sound, for shadows that block out stars, because if it happened once, it can happen again. And next time, you might be the one who sees. The world kept turning after Phoenix Lights, but for those who'd been there, something fundamental had shifted. Dr. Kite's documentary gained traction in years following Symington's confession. She appeared on major news networks, gave lectures at universities, presented evidence to anyone willing to listen. But more importantly, she connected witnesses, created community of people who'd shared experience and could validate each other's reality. That's what we needed most, one witness told her during 2012 reunion event in Phoenix. Not to convince skeptics. Just to know we weren't alone in what we'd seen, that other sane, rational people had experienced same thing. 200 witnesses attended that reunion, stood in park near where Kraft had passed 15 years earlier, shared stories, compared notes, found comfort in collective memory. Tim Lay brought his kids, now adults themselves. Alicia was 27, studying aerospace engineering at Arizona State. She credited Phoenix Lights with sparking her interest in flight, in pushing boundaries of what was possible. That night made me want to understand how things fly, she told Gathering. Made me want to be part of pushing human technology forward, because if they can do it, whoever they are, maybe we can too. Her brother Marcus, now 22, had different takeaway. It taught me that reality is negotiable, that what we're told is impossible might just be things we haven't figured out yet. Made me question everything, which I think is healthy. Their father listened with pride. His decision to let them witness that night, to not shield them from mystery, had shaped them in profound ways. They'd grown into people who asked questions, who challenged assumptions, who believed in possibility. That's not just family story. That's what happened across Phoenix. Generation of kids who saw something impossible became adults who questioned more, believed more, reached further. Some became scientists, engineers, researchers. Others became artists, writers, philosophers. All carried seed of wonder planted on March night in 1997. Mike Fortson attended reunion too. 62 now, retired, still sharp-eyed and observant. He'd brought his original notes from that night, pages yellowed and worn from being carried in his truck for years. "Why'd you keep them?" someone asked. "Because I knew someday people would want to know. Knew my memory might fade, but written record wouldn't. These notes are timestamp of moment my understanding of universe changed." He read aloud from them. 7:17 p.m., north of Prescott Valley. 5 lights in V formation appear over Granite Mountain. Within 2 minutes can see solid structure connecting them. Object is massive, estimate over mile wide. Silent, smooth movement. No visible propulsion. Passes directly overhead at 7:19 p.m. Can see underside. Dark, matte surface. No seams visible. Continues south toward Phoenix. Simple observations, clinical details. But hearing them read aloud 17 years later brought back that night with crystalline clarity. Several people in crowd wiped tears. Not from sadness, but from recognition. Yes, that's what it was like. Yes, someone else remembers it exactly as I do. Dr. Kite stood before crowd and made announcement. "I've been contacted by former military personnel who want to go on record about Phoenix Lights. They're ready to share what they know about military response that night, what radar showed, what orders came down. They're willing to testify if proper investigation is ever conducted." Murmurs ran through crowd. This was new. Official confirmation had always been missing piece. If military personnel were willing to talk, it changed everything. One of them was there that night. Colonel David Martinez, USAF retired. He'd served at Luke Air Force Base in 1997, working in operations control. "I wasn't supposed to be here," he said, taking microphone. "Signed non-disclosure agreements. Could lose pension. But I'm 70 years old, and I'm tired of lying." The crowd went silent. When reports started coming in at 7:30, we scrambled jets immediately. Not for training exercise, for intercept. We had unknown object in controlled airspace over major metropolitan area. That's threat situation. He paused, gathering courage to continue. Our radar painted it. Solid return. Enormous. Moving at approximately 30 miles per hour, which is impossibly slow for something that size to maintain flight. By time our F-16s were airborne, object was gone. Just gone. No radar contact. No visual. Disappeared like it had never been there. What did your superiors say? Someone called out. They ordered us to deny everything. Said it was national security matter. That public didn't need to know we had airspace intrusion we couldn't explain or defend against. So we lied. Said it was training exercise. Said flares we dropped at 10 p.m. were what people saw. But everyone in that control room knew truth. We'd had contact with something we couldn't identify or control. Another voice from crowd. Why come forward now? Martinez looked out at sea of faces. Because you deserve truth. Because I've watched you being ridiculed for 17 years for seeing something that was real. Because I'm old enough now that I don't care about consequences. Truth matters more than pension. The crowd erupted in applause. Not triumphant or vindictive, but grateful. Someone in authority. Someone with first-hand knowledge was finally confirming what they'd known all along. If you've ever been dismissed, told your experience wasn't real, made to feel crazy for trusting your own eyes, you understand what that moment meant. Vindication isn't about proving others wrong. It's about having your reality acknowledged, about being seen and heard and believed. Dr. Kaite hugged Martinez after his testimony. Thank you. She whispered. You have no idea what this means. I think I do, he replied. I've been carrying this for 17 years too, just from different side. In months following reunion, more military personnel came forward, not all publicly, but through confidential channels to Dr. Kaite and other researchers. Pattern emerged in their testimonies. Multiple radar installations had tracked object. NORAD had been notified. Fighter jets from 3 different bases had attempted intercept. All failed. Object had simply vanished when approached, as if aware it was being pursued and choosing to leave rather than engage. One radar operator described what his screen had shown. Return was so large that system initially interpreted it as malfunction. Objects that size don't fly. But it was moving, maintaining altitude, following straight course. Whatever it was, it had mass and was under intelligent control. Another pilot, speaking anonymously, we got within 5 miles of object before it disappeared. 1 second it was there on instruments, next second gone. No acceleration, no movement, just instant transition from present to absent. That's not technology we have. This information remained largely in researcher circles. Mainstream media, having briefly taken Phoenix Lights seriously after Symington's confession, had moved on to other stories. But for those paying attention, evidence was becoming overwhelming. Something real had happened. Something that military had detected, pursued, and failed to explain. And official story about flares was, as everyone suspected, deliberate misdirection. By 2017, 20 years after event, Phoenix held major anniversary commemoration. Thousands attended. Media from around world covered it. What had been fringe topic was now accepted historical event. Yes, something happened over Phoenix in 1997. What exactly remained debatable, but that something occurred was no longer seriously questioned. Tim Lay was interviewed for local news. What do you want people to take from Phoenix Lights? Reporter asked. He thought carefully before answering. I want them to know that universe is bigger than we've been taught. That mystery is okay. That not everything needs immediate explanation. And most importantly, that when thousands of people witness same thing, dismissing them all as mistaken or gullible is arrogance. Sometimes the simplest explanation is that something extraordinary happened. Do you think they'll come back? Tim smiled. I think they never left. I think they're always here, always watching.
Phoenix Lights wasn't first contact. It was just moment when they chose to be seen, and I think they'll choose to be seen again when time is right. When will that be? When we're ready. When we've grown enough as species to handle answer to questions we've been asking since we first looked up at stars. Dr. Kaite published comprehensive book in 2015. The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone. It became bestseller, translated into multiple languages, established her as leading authority on mass UFO sightings. But success wasn't why she'd done it. During book signing in Phoenix, elderly woman approached with tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," the woman said. "My husband saw the lights." Told everyone. Was ridiculed at work, mocked by friends. Died 5 years ago, still feeling like nobody believed him. Your book proves he was right. I just wish he'd lived to see it. Dr. Kaite took the woman's hands. He knew he was right. That's what matters. He didn't need others' validation to trust his own experience. That's courage. He would have been so happy to know others believed. They did believe. 10,000 of them. He was never alone. That's what Phoenix Lights really documented. Not proof of alien visitation, though that remained possibility, but proof that mass experience of mystery creates community. That shared wonder bonds strangers. That collective witnessing of impossible can change culture. 20 years of investigation revealed something else, too. Phoenix Lights wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of pattern. In months before March 1997, multiple sightings of V-shaped craft had been reported across American Southwest. Smaller events, fewer witnesses, but same basic description. In months after, similar craft were seen over Mexico, Canada, throughout United States, as if something had been conducting tour, showing itself deliberately, letting humanity see it. Why? That remained mystery. Some theorized it was message. We're here. We're watching. We're not hiding anymore. Others thought it was reconnaissance, studying human reactions to overt displays. Some believed it was preparation for eventual contact, gradual acclimatization to reality of non-human intelligence. Dr. Kaite had her own theory, developed over 2 decades of investigation. I think they're inviting us to grow up, to stop thinking of ourselves as center of universe, to recognize we're part of larger cosmic community. Phoenix Lights was lesson in humility and wonder. And judging by how we reacted, with denial, ridicule, cover-ups, we needed that lesson. You're probably wondering what you'd do if you saw something like this. Would you trust your eyes? Document it? Go public? Or would you stay quiet, avoid ridicule, try to forget? There's no wrong answer. But know this, 10,000 people in Phoenix chose to trust their experience, chose to speak up despite knowing they'd be dismissed. And because of their courage, because of their willingness to be witnesses, we know something extraordinary happened. We have record of it. We have evidence. We have community of people who refuse to let mystery be erased. In 2020, when Pentagon released UAP videos, tic-tac object, gimbal footage, Phoenix Lights veterans felt vindication mixed with frustration. Videos showed objects exhibiting same physics-defying characteristics they'd witnessed 23 years earlier. We've been saying this for decades, Mike Fortson told reporter covering story. Glad military is finally admitting it, but frustrating it took this long. How many witnesses were ridiculed in meantime? How much evidence was suppressed? We could have been having this conversation in 1997. But maybe humanity wasn't ready in 1997. Maybe we needed those 23 years of witnesses maintaining testimony, researchers preserving evidence, former officials slowly coming forward. Maybe truth can't be rushed, has to unfold at pace society can absorb. By 2023,
Phoenix Lights was taught in some university courses on unexplained phenomena, studied not just as UFO case, but as example of mass witnessing event and its socio-cultural implications. How do societies handle collective experience of mystery? How do authorities respond to events they can't explain? How do individuals maintain truth when confronted with official denial? These were questions that went beyond flying saucers. They were about epistemology, about trust in institutions, about nature of truth itself. Alicia Lay, now 43 and senior engineer at aerospace company, gave lecture at her alma mater. "Phoenix Lights changed my life," she told roomful of students. "Not just because I saw something incredible, but because of how adults responded." Watching my father refuse to let anyone dismiss what we'd experienced, that taught me to trust my own observations, to not automatically defer to authority when authority contradicts my lived experience. That lesson has served me throughout career in field where challenging assumptions is essential. One student raised hand. "Do you think we'll ever know what it was?" "We already know what it was," Alicia replied. "It was craft of unknown origin, exhibiting technology beyond current human capability, observed by thousands of people across several hours. What we don't know is who made it and why they were here, but not knowing everything doesn't mean we know nothing." "Does it scare you, knowing we're not alone?" Alicia smiled. "It did when I was 12. Now it excites me. Makes me want to work harder, push our technology further, because if they can do it, maybe someday we can too." Dr. Kite continued her work into her 70s. The documentary she'd created had spawned sequels, examining other mass sighting events, comparing patterns, building comprehensive picture of phenomenon that clearly existed but remained officially unexplained. In 2022 interview, she reflected on 25 years of investigation. "What I've learned is that this isn't about aliens versus humans. It's about consciousness recognizing consciousness, about different forms of intelligence existing in universe we're only beginning to understand. Phoenix Lights wasn't invasion or threat. It was contact. Brief, enigmatic, transformative contact that changed everyone who witnessed it." "Do you think they'll return?" "I think they never left. I think our perception is limited, and they exist in frequencies or dimensions we're not yet equipped to perceive consistently. But sometimes, maybe when conditions are right, maybe when they choose to be seen, the veil thins. We get glimpse, get reminder that reality is stranger and more wondrous than we've imagined." "What do you want people to take from Phoenix Lights?" "3 things," she said, holding up fingers. 1, trust your experience. If thousands of people witness same thing, that's data. Don't let anyone tell you it didn't happen. 2, mystery is okay. Not everything needs immediate explanation. Sometimes wonder is enough. And 3, we're not alone. Whether it's extraterrestrial visitors, interdimensional travelers, or something else entirely, consciousness exists beyond human form. And that's beautiful. That's hopeful. That's invitation to expand our understanding of what's possible. In spring of 2024, Mike Fortson passed away. He was 71. His obituary mentioned his decades as truck driver, his service to community, his surviving children and grandchildren. And it mentioned Phoenix Lights. He was proud witness to 1997 event, obituary read. Spent rest of his life telling story to anyone who'd listen. Maintained detailed notes of what he'd seen. Never wavered in testimony despite ridicule. He knew what he'd witnessed, and he made sure others knew too. At his funeral, his daughter read from his original notes. Simple observations written in truck stop that March night. Clinical details preserved for posterity. When she finished, she held up notebook. "Dad wanted this donated to Phoenix Lights archives," she said. "Wanted his testimony preserved for future researchers."
He believed someday we'd understand what happened, and he wanted to make sure we had evidence when that day came. The notebook now sits in collection at Arizona State University Library, along with hundreds of other witness accounts, photos, videos, documentation of night that changed Phoenix. Tim Lay still lives in Prescott. He's 68 now. Grandkids visit often. He takes them into backyard on clear nights, shows them stars, tells them about night he saw, something impossible. Your great-grandchildren will grow up in a world where this is accepted, he tells them, where contact with non-human intelligence is acknowledged fact rather than fringe belief, and you can tell them you knew someone who was there, who saw it with his own eyes, who never stopped believing in possibility of wonder. Dr. Kaite plans to write one more book. Comprehensive analysis of 27 years of Phoenix Lights investigation, incorporating all new testimonies, all declassified documents, all evidence accumulated since 1997. It'll be my final word on subject, she says. Everything I've learned, everyone I've interviewed, every conclusion I've reached, whether anyone believes it or not isn't the point. Point is to preserve truth, to document what happened, to honor courage of every witness who spoke up despite knowing they'd be dismissed. She pauses, looking out window at Phoenix skyline. We saw something real, something that changed us, and no amount of official denial or skeptical dismissal can erase that. It happened. We were there, and we'll keep telling story until day when believing it isn't controversial anymore. That day might be closer than we think. With Pentagon acknowledging UAPs, with former intelligence officials testifying to Congress about recovered craft and non-human biologics, with shift in cultural attitude from ridicule to serious investigation, conversation is changing. Phoenix Lights was ahead of its time. 10,000 witnesses who were dismissed as gullible or mistaken, but they held firm, maintained their testimony, preserved their evidence, and slowly, grudgingly, world is beginning to acknowledge they might have been right all along. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, think about those 10,000 people looking up on March night in 1997. Think about families in backyards, truckers pulling over, doctors grabbing cameras, children asking parents what that thing in sky is. Think about how one event connected strangers across hundreds of miles in shared experience that transcended normal reality. How moment of mystery created community that lasted decades. How witnesses became activists, researchers, preservers of truth. Think about Governor Symington, standing before cameras 10 years later, admitting he'd lied because truth was too uncomfortable. Think about Colonel Martinez, risking pension to confirm what witnesses already knew. Think about Dr. Kaite, spending 27 years documenting one night because it mattered that much. And think about yourself. What would you do? If you looked up tomorrow night and saw lights in V formation, massive craft blocking stars, silent movement that defied physics, would you trust your eyes? Would you document it? Would you speak up? You might have to someday, because if Phoenix Lights teaches us anything, it's that this isn't over. They showed themselves once. They can show themselves again. And next time, you might be witness. So keep watching sky, keep questioning official narratives, keep believing in possibility that universe is stranger and more wonderful than we've been taught. Because somewhere out there, maybe they're still watching too, still patient, still waiting for humanity to grow enough to handle full truth of their presence. Phoenix Lights was chapter in ongoing story, not the beginning. Certainly not the end. Just moment when veil lifted, when mystery showed itself clearly, when 10,000 people became witnesses to something that changed everything. They saw, they remembered, they testified. And now, so do you. Sleep well. Dream of vast crafts gliding silently through night sky.
of universe full of wonders we're only beginning to comprehend, of intelligence that watches from shadows, occasionally stepping into light to remind us we're not alone. Phoenix remembers. Witnesses remember. The lights remain mystery, invitation, reminder that reality is negotiable and wonder is always waiting just beyond edge of what we think we know. Good night.